I'm Kurtop, and these are 100 mysterious structures that defy science. He burned a wonder of the world for likes. In ancient Ephesus, on Asia Minor's west coast, archaeologists have traced the famous Temple of Artemis, one of the seven wonders. Only fragments of columns and the foundation remain, but even that is enough to understand the scale. However, one of the strangest and saddest stories of antiquity is connected with the temple, the story of Herostratus. In 356 BC, he set fire to the temple, not for revenge or faith, but for fame. Herostratus wanted his name to be remembered, even if he had to pay for it with his life. The temple burned down on the same night, according to legend, that Alexander the Great was born. The fire destroyed one of the greatest structures of the ancient world and became an example of senseless destruction. After the fire, Ephesus authorities banned mentioning Herostratus' name under penalty of death, but this only preserved it. The historian Theopompus recorded it, along with the paradox itself. The man who destroyed the masterpiece became immortal precisely because of his crime. When archaeologists in the 20th century excavated the lower layers of the sanctuary, they found traces of the ancient fire, charred beams and melted fragments of tiles. And even in these pieces of ash, a strange irony can be felt. The greatest temple of its era was destroyed not by enemies, not by a natural disaster, but by a man who wanted to be remembered. Today, the name Herostratus has become a symbol of destructive fame, a reminder that time remembers not only creators, but also those who tried to be remembered at any cost. Even now, we often see bloggers who are willing to do terrible things for the sake of popularity. It turns out that people practiced this even thousands of years ago. Why are the pyramids empty? The Great Pyramids of Giza are still officially called the tombs of the pharaohs. This version is so familiar that it is rarely questioned. The problem is that after 2 centuries of research, not a single ruler's body has been found inside the pyramids of the Fourth Dynasty. No mummies, no burial complexes, no traces of burials that could be definitely linked to the pharaohs. The stone sarcophagi found inside the pyramids have always turned out to be empty. The walls lack painted texts, in sharp contrast to the richly decorated tombs of later periods. Narrow shafts, hidden chambers, and complex internal geometry look more like an engineering system than a space for burial rituals. Even in antiquity, this sparked debates. Herodotus wrote that Khufu was supposedly buried in an underground chamber connected to the Nile by a canal, but modern ground-penetrating radars have not detected such structures. Diodorus Siculus suggested that the pharaohs deliberately left the pyramids empty, fearing looting, and chose other places for their burials. But then a new oddity arises. If the pyramids were looted, why did only the bodies disappear and not the statues? In the Pyramid of Khafra, a massive diorite statue still stands to this day, an item that looters would have destroyed or taken away first. In the Valley of the Kings, on the contrary, mummies were preserved and reburied even after robberies. The scale of construction also raises additional questions. Pharaoh Snefru built 3 large pyramids at once. That's too many for personal tombs. But it's quite logical for a state program with a different purpose. Some passages are oriented towards specific stars, and the proportions of the structures indicate complex cosmological ideas. That's why alternative theories are being voiced more and more often. Pyramids as symbolic monuments, astronomical markers, elements of religious infrastructure, or architectural embodiments of the idea of the ruler's ascension. There is still no answer. There are only empty chambers, perfect geometry, and a sense that we still don't fully understand the purpose of these structures. Year 415, India, Delhi. In the center of Delhi stands an iron pillar over 7 meters tall and weighing about 6 tons. Erected around the year 415 AD during the reign of Emperor Chandragupta II, it has stood in the open air for more than 1,500 years. It has survived monsoons, heat, dust storms, and the passing of dozens of eras. Yet it is almost untouched by rust, even though it is made not of stainless steel, but of pure iron. Analysis of the metal showed that the column contains a high percentage of phosphorus and almost no sulfur or manganese, which creates a protective film that prevents corrosion. But modern industrial metallurgy has only been able to partially replicate this effect so far. Moreover, the column was not cast, but forged from multiple pieces of iron welded into a single monolith, which requires precise temperature control and impact processing that would be impossible without advanced technology. According to the official version, in the 4th and 5th centuries, iron was produced in small furnaces, suitable for simple tools and weapons, but not for creating 6-ton structures that remain resistant to corrosion for 1,500 years. Nevertheless, the column stands, its composition has been studied, its date confirmed, and it is not a legend or a disputed artifact, but a recognized monument that you can touch with your own hands. The strangest part comes next. The technology that made it possible to create this metal did not develop or scale up. No series of similar columns appeared in India. No metallurgical school emerged, and there are no records of transitional forms or attempts to repeat the success. It's as if the knowledge appeared at a single point, was applied once and then disappeared, leaving behind an object that fits neither the technological level of the era nor the logic of its development. And this is already the 3rd consecutive case where a technology appears ahead of its time and vanishes without a trace, leaving behind neither a line of progress, nor a chain of development, nor an explanation that could settle the question. The most mystical mountain, Roraima, rises above the jungles of the Guyana highlands to almost 2,500 meters. Its summit is a flat plateau with sheer cliffs dropping down hundreds of meters. These cliffs make Roraima almost completely isolated from the surrounding world. Ascent is possible only by a single slope, and the journey to the summit takes several days. The geological age of Roraima is estimated to be about 2 billion years. This makes it one of the oldest preserved surfaces on the planet. The rock that forms the plateau was formed long before complex life appeared, long before plants emerged onto land. Everything that happens here today unfolds on a foundation that existed before the Earth as we know it. Almost daily rains create a unique environment on the summit. Water flows down the edges of the plateau in waterfalls, seeps into cracks, nourishes the soil, and forms a closed ecosystem. Plants and microorganisms live here that can't be found anywhere else. Some carnivorous plants, frogs, and insects have evolved in complete isolation, following their own unique path of development. For the region's indigenous peoples, Roraima has always been a place of power. In their myths, the mountain was seen as a remnant of the world tree, a piece of an ancient order once disrupted. These ideas did not arise from geology, but from a sense of remoteness and scale. The plateau is perceived as a separate world, existing according to its own rules. Modern science describes Roraima through plate tectonics, erosion, and climate. But even with precise explanations, there remains a sense of a place that has survived almost everything. Continents shifted, oceans disappeared, species appeared and went extinct, but the summit continued to exist, changing so slowly that human time here almost loses its meaning. A strange place for a sphinx. The Sphinx stands in a very inconvenient place for a monument of its era. It is not carved from blocks like the pyramids, but from a solid mass of rock in a lowland that was regularly flooded even in ancient times. Its body is badly damaged, and even during the New Kingdom, the Egyptians carried out large-scale restoration work. It's as if they inherited an object that was already ancient even for them. This is recorded in inscriptions and layers of restoration, not in later fantasies. The strangest detail is the absence of direct evidence of construction. There are no inscriptions about the foundation, no reliefs of the process, and no nearby construction settlements. This is unusual for Egypt. The pyramids are better documented than the Sphinx, despite being much more complex. All that connects it to Khafra is context, the logic of its location, and stylistic similarities, but not direct evidence. Essentially, the Sphinx is a huge object without a birth certificate. That's where the debate started. Geologists noticed signs of erosion. Archaeologists noticed strange voids and shafts around it. Historians point to the silence of the sources. None of these factors alone proves a different date, but together they make the Sphinx an inconvenient object for the simple version. What matters here isn't if it's thousands of years older than the pyramids, but something else. Pre-dynastic findings show that Egypt knew how to work with symbols, the body, ritual, and space long before the pharaohs. Against this background, the Sphinx ceases to be a miracle out of nowhere and becomes part of a long process, the beginning of which we can see, but the end of which we still do not fully understand. A tomb that survived an earthquake. On the territory of the ancient city of Pasargadae, the capital of the Achaemenid Empire, there is a tomb that is traditionally associated with the name of Cyrus the Great. The structure was built around 530 BC and remains one of the most enduring monuments of ancient Iran. For 2,500 years, it has withstood dozens of earthquakes without losing the integrity of its structure. Studies have shown that the builders used principles similar to modern seismic isolation technologies. The foundation of the tomb consists of several layers of limestone. The lower layer is bonded with a limestone mortar mixed with ash and sand, while the upper blocks are laid on top without rigid fixation. There is a layer between the levels that allowed the structure to slightly slide during underground tremors. This reduced the load and prevented the stonework from being destroyed. The upper part of the tomb is made of massive blocks connected by metal clamps. Despite the simple shape of the cubic chamber on a 6-stepped base, the structure is a well-designed engineering system. Modeling conducted by the Islamic Azad University showed that during strong ground vibrations, the upper part is indeed able to shift relative to the base, absorbing the energy of the impacts. There is still no definitive evidence that Cyrus was actually buried in this mausoleum. The tomb was opened and looted back in ancient times, and the epitaph mentioned in the sources has not survived to this day. Though there's debate about who's buried here, the structure stands as one of the oldest earthquake-resistant buildings, proving Achaemenid engineers understood earthquakes better than commonly thought. Pyramidal ingots, North Bosnia, Sava River. Underwater archaeologists are not retrieving jewelry or coins from the bottom, but hundreds of iron bipyramidal ingots, extremely rare blanks from which, 2,000 years ago, knives, arrowheads, and parts of everyday items were forged. They are shaped like double pyramids and rarely found in large artifact groups. Previously, museums in France, Germany, Slovenia, and Sarajevo had only single specimens. But here, there's an entire cache. They date back to around the 1st-2nd centuries BC, a time when local trade networks were being reorganized under the pressure of Rome, and iron was becoming the main currency of craftsmanship. The archaeologist's theory is simple. This is sunken cargo. The river surged, a barge could have capsized, or a wagon could have gone into the water at the crossing. The current carried away the lighter goods, while the heavy bipyramidal ingots settled in piles on the riverbed. They measured the site with reference points, created a 3D photogrammetry model, and immediately placed each ingot in distilled water to slow down corrosion. Next comes the chemistry. The analysis will reveal which ore the iron was smelted from and the routes it was transported along. If the tracing matches, the Sava will emerge as a major transport corridor even before the arrival of Rome, and Bosanska Posavina as a hub where iron was turned into power, into weapons, tools, and infrastructure. This is a rare case when a hoard tells us not about luxury, but about production. These are not finished products, but blanks and logistics. It's a useful perspective on the economy of that time. Finds like these make it clear what exactly was traded and how it was transported. Stone architecture propaganda. If you seek the Reich's language in stone, not papers, it speaks through the amphitheaters, built in the early 1930s for public gatherings and rituals. But in fact, they turned out to be perfect venues for controlling emotions. Stone, steps, fire. A voice that carries without a microphone. The most notable Thingstätte sites are on Heidelberg's Heiligenberg and the Berlin Arena, which was then called Dietrich Eckart Bühne. They all look similar. A semicircle, a high backdrop, hidden passages, places for torches, and stone pockets for musicians or portable equipment. From above, it looks like romantic ruins, but on site you can see the engineering side, neat drainage systems, precise geometry, spots for placing columns, where people themselves become part of the design. Architecture dictates people's behavior, to stand, to listen, to respond in unison. Here, it's easy to understand how the ritual worked. The entrance is a long path down the slope, so that during the process everyone has time to become a single body. On the platform, there's a teleprompter made of stone. The host is audible without equipment from the central axis, as the backdrop reflects their voice. Alcoves on the sides held the flag bearers. Above, there are spots for lighting effects and torch circles. A few steps are extra. They're not for the audience, but for formations. It's easy to lay out a sign, slogans, or a symbol on them. Looking from above, you quickly get the idea. Many myths surround these places, especially about astronomical alignments. They claim the stages and passages align with the solstice. In some locations, there is a coincidence, but you don't need to look for the cosmos where good direction is enough. The real magic is in the acoustics and geometry. If you stand on the central spot, the Heidelberg stone, and speak in a normal voice, it's clearly heard in the upper rows. It creates a sense of wonder, although what we have here is simply a well-calculated sound reflection. After the war, these venues were treated differently. At Heidelberg Thingstätte, the technical aspects are clearly visible. A narrow service passage behind the stage backdrop, niches for cables and torch holders in the side walls. Drainage that goes under the stands and leads out into the ravine. That's why the venue doesn't get flooded after rain. In the upper rows, you can see marks for formation intervals. The distance between the marks matches the width of a standard banner. The Berlin Waldbühne, formerly Dietrich Eckart Bühne, is designed differently. There's a wide orchestra pit, fan-shaped exits from under the stands, and spots for spotlights at the edges of the venue. The stages are designed for a frontal view of the columns, not for a circle. These are two different models of the same idea. The stone geometry itself sets the rhythm of movement and places for people. No rituals or grand words needed. The triangular shield, 20 kilometers southeast of Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, archaeologists have excavated a rare Roman watchtower. Its base is an equilateral triangle with sides about 7 meters long. The dating is based on coins from Emperor Caracalla, the end of the 2nd century AD. This is unusual for the Roman Empire. Most outposts were square or circular. The question arises, why a triangle? The narrow tip of the tower faces the slope. A battering ram or stones would slide along the wall without destroying the masonry. Inside, they found a stone well and remains of a wooden floor rebuilt during the Byzantine period and the Second Bulgarian Empire in the 12th century. Similar forms are found only at the border with watchtowers. The Romans called such borderlines alimes, meaning the entire system of ramparts, roads, and fortresses along the frontier. In Bulgaria, this is the earliest example of irregular planning. Instead of a standard template, the engineers chose a layout that better suited the mountainous terrain. Today, the tower is part of the Irvich Museum complex. It shows that Roman builders were able to deviate from standards when local conditions required it. The 1st century BC, Rome. In the 1st century BC, the Romans began to build things that modern engineering still studies with amazement and frustration. Because these structures have survived earthquakes, floods, and 2,000 years of erosion, while their modern counterparts fall apart in just decades. We're talking about Roman concrete, a material that was used for ports, breakwaters, domes, aqueducts, and massive public buildings, many of which still stand today. Unlike modern concrete, the Roman mixture contained volcanic ash, lime, and seawater. And it was this combination that triggered chemical processes, which over time didn't destroy the material, but actually made it stronger. In 2017, researchers from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology confirmed that crystals of tobermorite and phillipsite form in the structure of ancient concrete, filling micro cracks and preventing further destruction, creating a self-healing effect.
Недоступны большинству современных смесей.
The problem is that after the fall of the Roman Empire, the recipe for this concrete disappeared completely. Medieval builders no longer used this technology. Ports were destroyed, domes cracked, and concrete was reinvented only in the 19th century, but without the ability to self-heal. There is no technological continuity between Roman ports, which have stood for 2,000 years, and modern embankments, which are designed to last 50 to 70 years. And it's as if the knowledge was lost entirely, not just gradually forgotten. Archaeological and chemical analyses do not question either the composition or the age of Roman concrete, and its properties are officially recognized. But it's impossible to explain why such technology disappeared for 1,500 years without acknowledging that the technical level of the ancient world was higher than is commonly believed. This is another case where knowledge doesn't evolve but is interrupted, leaving behind a trace that we still can't fully replicate, despite modern science and industry. The Inca Labyrinth. For decades, people searched beneath Cusco's center for what they thought was a myth. In 16th century chronicles, there was mention of the underground labyrinth Chinkana, a network of tunnels that began at the Temple of the Sun and went beneath the city. For a long time, this was considered a legend, until archaeologists approached the task without excavations, using acoustic surveys and ground-penetrating radar. The result turned out to be too precise to ignore. Under the city, an extensive system of hollow corridors was detected, with a main branch connecting the Korikancha Temple and the Saksai Huaman Fortress. The distance is more than a kilometer. The tunnels are about 2.5 meters wide and around 1.5 meters high. This isn't a secret passage, but a full-fledged underground route. The system has branches in different parts of the city, like a real street network, only hidden under stone. The Incas first dug trenches, then reinforced them with stone walls and beams, turning the space into a stable structure. Now researchers are preparing precise entry points to get inside without destroying the system. All this points to a well-thought-out infrastructure designed for actual movement and control of space at a time when the city above might have been unsafe. Why are there walls underwater? Off the coast of Brittany, near the island of Seine, stone structures were discovered underwater that, at first glance, looked too neat to be a random pile. Straight lines, precise distances between the stones, vertical slabs set as if they were placed intentionally. And all of this is on the sea floor, a few meters below the current water level. Archaeologists have recorded several such structures. The largest one is a wall over 100 meters long, made of massive stone blocks and topped with vertical slabs. Nearby, there are other lines, parallel, intersecting, as if part of a single system. Radiocarbon and geological data point to the late Mesolithic and early Neolithic periods. At that time, sea levels were lower, and the coastline was very different. Why were they built? It's still not entirely clear. One theory is that they were fish traps that used the tides. Another is that they were defensive or boundary structures. But the scale and precision of some walls go beyond simple practical explanations. There's something else that's interesting too. In Breton folklore, there's a long-standing legend about a settlement nearby that sank due to a flood. For a long time, it was considered a myth. Now, there are stone lines underwater that look as if someone tried to mark the boundaries of the land, knowing it might disappear. The mysterious steel sanatorium. In Cleveland, on the shore of Lake Erie, a giant steel sphere about 20 meters tall with 38 rooms inside began operating in 1928. The structure was built with funds from industrialist Henry Timken at the initiative of Dr. Furman Cunningham, an anesthesiologist who believed that increased pressure and an oxygen mixture could treat a wide range of diseases. The building had 5 floors with living rooms and bathrooms, as well as powerful climate control. 3 compressors, 2 boilers, an ammonia cooler weighing about 27 tons and filters that allowed control of pressure, temperature, humidity, and circulation. The Cunningham method was based on the mistaken assumption that many diseases were caused by anaerobic bacteria and could be treated with oxygen therapy under pressure. The year it opened, the Bureau of Investigation of the American Medical Association called the project commercial, not scientific. In 1934, James Rand Jr. bought the facility and renamed it the Ohio Institute of Oxygen Therapy. But there was no steady flow of patients. 2 years later, the complex was resold and attempts were made to use it as a regular clinic, but without success. By 1942, the steel sphere was dismantled for metal to meet the needs of the military industry. Cunningham's ideas were not confirmed regarding cancer, diabetes, and universal healing. However, hyperbaric oxygenation found limited medical use. In cases of decompression sickness, poisoning, carbon monoxide exposure, and some tissue healing issues. This is no longer related to the steel sanatorium itself. A city on the edge of the desert. A few kilometers from Baghdad, among the sands, there is a huge structure that from a distance looks like a natural rock. But this is the ziggurat of Dur Kurigalzu, a temple tower built by the Kassite kings more than 3,400 years ago. Once this was the capital of a dynasty that ruled Babylonia for almost 4 centuries. The city was founded by King Kurigalzu I. Its appearance was not accidental. An important route passed nearby, connecting Mesopotamia with the Iranian plateau and the territories where lapis lazuli was mined. Dur Kurigalzu covered about 225 hectares. It was protected by a massive wall and consisted of several mounds, where residential quarters, temples, and utility complexes were located. The main building was a huge ziggurat dedicated to Enlil. Today, only its inner part, the brick core, remains of the tower. The outer layers have been destroyed by time, wind, and rain. But it is precisely because of this that scientists have had the opportunity to see the construction details, structures that have hardly survived anywhere else. Erosion has revealed layers of reed mats and bundles that ancient builders placed between the bricks to reinforce the structure and compensate for ground subsidence. In the 19th century, travelers confused the ziggurat with the remains of the biblical Tower of Babel, which only added to the site's aura of mystery. In the 1940s, archaeologists cleared the lower levels, and in the 1970s, Iraqi authorities reconstructed part of the first tier in an attempt to stop the destruction. Today, Dur Kurigalsu is in a fragile state. It is not collapsing instantly, but it is slowly crumbling and needs preservation. The fate of the ancient city depends on the stability of the region and the ability to attract specialists.
Скульптуры исчезнувшего времени.
In the Chinese province of Guizhou, an unusual stone valley has been created, which has been named Yelang. It was built by the cartoonist and Professor Sun Peilun, who dedicated more than 20 years to this project. It covers an area of about 180 meters. He created hundreds of sculptures, towers, and walls assembled from stone. The complex includes artificial castles, ponds, and pathways with faces carved into the rocks. Local stonemasons took part in the work, and the author taught them a special technique to work without blueprints, using stones as if they were building simple fences. This method preserved the rock's natural shapes and irregularities. Local limestone, which is accessible and eco-friendly, was used. The idea for the Yelang Valley came to the artist after a visit to the United States, where he saw the Crazy Horse Memorial. Palin decided to create a similar project in China to commemorate the extinct Yelang tribe, which lived on this land almost 2,000 years ago. No written records remain from the ancient city, and the valley became an attempt to restore their memory through art. Today, the complex has turned into a cultural center. University buildings have appeared next to the valley, and students help Palun with construction and maintaining the grounds. The project is seen as a combination of archaeology, architecture, and exploration. The Yelang Valley has become an example of how modern people can restore the past not through discoveries, but through their own ideas about what might have been forgotten. The sunken port of Cleopatra. Off the coast near Taposiris Magna, west of Alexandria, archaeologists found a submerged area with signs of an ancient harbor. Kathleen Martinez's team, together with marine archaeologist Bob Ballard, describes rows of massive foundations estimated to be over 6 meters high. Cemented blocks, fragments of columns, storage and transport amphorae, and most importantly, a large number of anchors dating back to the era of Cleopatra VII. Such a set of items usually accompanies a working port, docking line, storage areas, and navigational equipment. In 2022, an underground tunnel was discovered here, stretching 1,227 meters toward the Mediterranean Sea. It contained ceramics and items from the Ptolemaic period. The harbor could have served the city complex and the temple of Taposiris. And during the reign of Cleopatra, it could have served her fleet as well. This is indicated by the dating and the maritime profile of the finds. But we need test pits, dating based on the deposits and linking the structures to the ancient shoreline. If this is confirmed, we will get rare evidence of how the coastal network near the Ptolemaic capital looked and functioned, not in text, but in stone, wood, and iron. Ancient stone circles in Saudi Arabia. Archaeologists in Saudi Arabia have excavated 8 ancient stone circles, which served as dwellings for people more than 7,000 years ago. About 345 such structures have been identified using aerial photography in the lava field of Heret Uweirid, not far from the city of Al-Ula in the northwest of Saudi Arabia. The stone circles have a diameter ranging from 4 to 8 meters, and they include at least one standing stone in the center. During the excavations, archaeologists discovered many stone tools made of basalt. Almost 225 kilograms of stone tools or their fragments were extracted from just 5 circles. Bones of sheep, goats, and cows were also found. Among the finds were various seashells from the Red Sea, which is located about 120 kilometers to the west. The round shape of houses was a global phenomenon in early architecture. Rectangular houses appeared later in the Neolithic period. The architecture of standing stone circles in Saudi Arabia is similar to structures found in Jordan, which date to about 500 years earlier. The people who built these structures, they also raised sheep, goats, and cattle. The Beer Quarry Cave. This Roman quarry was once a hideout for smugglers. Now, rare species of bats live here. The beer stone quarried here was an important building material as far back as the Roman era. 2,000 years of quarrying created a winding system of caves near the village of Beer, which gave its name to this stone. The first Romans arriving in Devon noticed the limestone cliffs at the mouth of the River Exe. They discovered veins of fine-grained limestone and began to quarry it. When the surface supplies ran out, the Romans dug deeper into the rocks, extracting the stone with pickaxes and wooden wedges. This stone was used to build important public buildings. The stone was transported to the river and sent off by boat. After the Romans left, the quarries were used by the Saxons. Their workings were characterized by sharp square corners, unlike the Romans' rounded ones. Beer stone was easy to work with, but it hardened in the open air, becoming stronger. It was cut on site and used to build such buildings as Windsor Castle, London Bridge, and Westminster Abbey. The stone was also used in the construction of Christ Church Cathedral in St. Louis, USA. After the Protestant Reformation, Catholics held secret masses in these caves. In the early 19th century, smugglers, including Jack Rettenbury, used the caves to hide contraband from sea vessels. Stone quarrying stopped in the early 20th century when a new site was discovered. Now these caves are of special scientific interest because of rare bats. The oldest calendar archaeologists made an amazing discovery in Göbekli Tepe, Turkey, finding the world's oldest calendar, which is 12,000 years old. This discovery is capable of changing our understanding of early civilizations, as it shows that as early as 10,000 BC people already knew how to measure time. This happened long before the rise of ancient Greece and other well-known cultures. The calendar is carved on a stone column and contains 365 marks, which indicates the existence of 12 months with the addition of 11 extra days. At the top of the column, you can see symbols, including the letter V, and at the bottom, there is a depiction of a bird with a round object and a scorpion. These images may symbolize the sun and zodiac signs. Research also points to a connection with a comet that caused a sharp cooling for 1,200 years. This event had a devastating impact on large animal species and may have caused significant changes in the region's ecosystem. Historians believe that such catastrophic events could have acted as a catalyst for the emergence of new religions and the development of agriculture, which in turn led to the formation of the first civilizations. Corral. Submarine headquarters in the forest under Berlin, among swamps and old pines. There is a place that was long considered a myth. It was simply called Corrali, a secret base from which German submarines were controlled, despite having no direct access to the sea. In the dense forest near Bernau, there was a connection with the Atlantic. If a submarine disappeared somewhere in the ocean, its last signals would come here. From the air, this place looks like an ordinary patch of forest, but beneath the moss are kilometers of cables, concrete antenna rings, tunnels, and bunkers. Everything that remains of the underground communications headquarters of the Kriegsmarine, built in 1943. At that time, the best radio operators of the Reich were brought here. There were amplifiers, repeaters, geographic machines, and even backup generators in shock-proof chambers. Corrali was not just a communications center. It was the brain of the submarine war, hidden underground. When Soviet troops approached Berlin in 1945, the base personnel received orders to destroy the equipment. Documents were burned in the concrete corridors, safes were sunk, and some underground passages flooded. After the war, Corrali vanished from maps. For decades, locals mentioned underground noises, antennas buried deep, and an occasional blue light piercing the moss. The legends multiplied because no one knew exactly what was left under the forest. In 2019, archaeologists entered there for the first time. They expected ruins, but found a labyrinth. Dozens of rooms with collapsed ceilings, slabs marked with radio equipment labels, remnants of telephone switchboards, and aluminum plates with unit codes. One of the corridors sloped downward toward a concrete shaft filled with water. Scanners showed that beneath it there was another level, still unexplored. The strangest thing was the acoustics. In the underground tunnels of Coralli, sound behaves unnaturally. Footsteps are muffled and echoes return with a delay. It's as if there's a void underground that doesn't let sound go. Local urban explorers call it the station's breath. There's an old British intelligence report dated June 1945. It says that the base might have tested the Drachenruf protocol, a radio cipher for summoning submarines, with a range of over 5,000 kilometers. The document ends abruptly. No one has proven what kind of signal it was or if it even existed to this day, but the archives confirm that one of the last radio interceptions of the Reich's submarines did indeed coincide in time with the last communication session recorded near Bernau. Today, Coral stands in silence. The concrete is overgrown, doors locked, and the forest has reclaimed the abandoned land. Press your ear to the stone and hear a faint hum, maybe the wind or perhaps the memory of machinery. And everyone who went down there says the same thing. It feels like the station is just waiting for an order that never came. A stone city made of shells. In Western Australia, just a couple of hours' drive from Perth, there's a place that looks like a set from a movie about an alien planet. The Pinnacles Desert. Thousands of stone spires jutting out of the sand. Some look like columns, others like mushrooms, and others like fragments of walls. Some of them reach up to 3.5 meters in height, and in the light of the setting sun they cast long shadows, turning the landscape into a stone labyrinth. For a long time, these formations were thought to be either the remains of ancient structures or the result of unusual erosion. In reality, the story turned out to be even stranger. Tens of thousands of years ago, there was an ocean here. After it receded, huge masses of seashells remained on the surface. Over time, they were compressed and turned into limestone, and then the wind came into play. Slowly, millennium after millennium, it blew away the soft sand, leaving only the densest cores behind. That's how the shells that once lay on the seafloor became vertical spires in the middle of the desert. No volcanoes, no tectonics, no human hands, just water, limestone, and time. Similar formations can be found in other parts of the world, but nowhere are they gathered so densely and over such a large area. That's why the pinnacles are easily mistaken for the ruins of a vanished city. A city that never existed but looks too convincing to be a coincidence. The oldest doors of Rome, the bronze doors of the Pantheon in Rome, were cast during the reign of Emperor Hadrian around 115 AD and are still in place today. Each leaf is about 7.6 meters high and more than 2 meters wide. The structure is made of solid bronze and designed for precise weight balancing. The hinges, fittings, and proportions allow the doors to be used daily without additional mechanisms. The surface has preserved traces of time, but the geometry and functionality have remained unchanged. These doors were originally created as part of an architectural ensemble, not as a decorative element. Their production required large casting molds, precise calculations, and access to significant resources. The doors continue to serve their function, having been in active use for almost 2,000 years. The Garmsar Salt Cave. In the Iranian district of Garmsar, there is a place that looks as if it was built by modern engineers. Huge stone columns, even walls, an archway disappearing into the darkness. But all of this was carved out by hand back in the time of the Achaemenid Empire, about 2,500 years ago when they mined salt. The workers extracted layer by layer, leaving massive salt pillars between the excavations, natural supports without which the cave would have collapsed. This method of extraction is rare because usually in ancient times the mines were small, but Garmsar is a huge multi-kilometer system created even before the Hellenistic era. The salt here was used not only for cooking, it was used in medicine for preserving food, in household chores, and even in religious rituals. That's why the mining was done carefully. They carved out smooth walls, leaving lines that created a geometry which looks almost unreal today. The cave has 27 shafts, some of which go dozens of meters deep. And the most amazing thing is that it is still completely stable. The salt columns have withstood time, earthquakes, and changes in humidity. The cave has become a tourist attraction. People come to see the underground city that doesn't need cement or metal beams. the first of its kind Bronze Age fortress. In the Romanian forests of Neams County, people discovered an ancient fortress about 5,000 years old, and modern LIDAR technology helped them do it. Thanks to drones equipped with laser scanners, it was possible to see through the dense vegetation and get a clear image of the structure that had been hidden from the human eye for centuries. The fortress dates back to the period of transition from the Neolithic to the Bronze Age, a time when people had just begun to build fortified settlements. The LiDAR revealed that it was a well-designed and powerful structure, moats hundreds of meters long, earthen ramparts, and a strategically advantageous location on a height, all indicate serious knowledge and labor organization among the ancient builders. Only with the help of modern technology can we truly understand the scale and structure of ancient monuments. These are not just ruins, they are traces of a complex, well-thought-out civilization that we are only beginning to rediscover. Trilithon? In Baalbek, at the foundation of the Temple of Jupiter, there are 3 enormous stone blocks that still amaze even experienced archaeologists. They are called the Trilithon. Just imagine the scale. Each of these blocks weighs almost 800 tons, and their size is impressive. Approximately 19 meters long, just over 4 meters high, and about 3.6 meters wide. Even today, lifting and moving such gigantic stones would not be easy, and the ancient builders didn't have cranes or special equipment at their disposal. It is still not entirely clear how exactly these colossal stones were transported and put in place. It is believed that the stone blocks were moved on special wooden sledges using logs and hundreds of workers. Some have even suggested the involvement of aliens in the construction, but serious scholars reject such hypotheses. The Trilithon is more than the temple's foundation. It clearly shows the advanced engineering of ancient civilizations. Perhaps future discoveries will help unravel the mystery of how such massive structures appeared in antiquity. The gates through which death passed. On the southwestern coast of Sicily, archaeologists have excavated not just ruins, but an entirely forgotten ancient city. 3-meter-high walls, gates, cemeteries, workshops, all of this belonged to the ancient Greek city of Selinunte. Recently, the northern gates were discovered, through which processions passed to the necropolises. They led to 5,000 burials, from simple graves to rich tombs, and all of this stood on the most vulnerable border of the city. Apparently, ritual and vulnerability were connected. According to Diodorus Siculus, it was from here that the Carthaginian troops broke into the city. The battle lasted 10 days, and 16,000 defenders of Selinunte were killed. The battlefield is right here, under our feet, and nearby is the cemetery where they were possibly buried. It's amazing how much has been preserved. Ovens, fragments of ceramics, remains of craft workshops, wine storage facilities. By the scale and density of the finds, it becomes clear that the city lived, traded, ritualized death, and suffered. And now, 2,500 years later, it is slowly returning to the surface. Ancient parquet. The Sweet Track is a wooden walkway built about 5,830 years ago in England and discovered in 1970 by archaeologist Ray Sweet, after whom it was named. It is one of the oldest known examples of ancient human engineering skills. The walkway stretched for 1.8 kilometers across the marsh and consisted of wooden planks laid on crossbeams, which allowed people to safely cross the boggy areas. The accuracy of the dating was achieved thanks to dendrochronological analysis of the wood, which showed that all the trees for the walkway were cut down at about the same time. Interestingly, the walkway was used for only about 10 years before it was abandoned, probably due to rising water levels. Artifacts found along the path confirm that it was actively used. The Sweet Track demonstrates that even in the Neolithic era, people knew how to build complex structures and plan their use. Interestingly, similar technologies for building walkways were preserved in the English countryside until recent centuries, which highlights the practicality and durability of ancient engineering solutions. 2600 BC Egypt, Saqqara. In Saqqara, in a necropolis dating back to the 26th century BC, there are 24 granite sarcophagi, each carved from a single block of Aswan granite and weighing between 70 and 100 tons. These sarcophagi are located in the underground galleries of the Serapeum at a depth of more than 10 meters and were discovered in 1851 by the French archaeologist Auguste Mariette. Their inner surfaces are polished to a mirror finish. In Saqqara, the tolerance is less than 0.01 mm, which matches the precision of modern CNC machines. Aswan granite has a hardness of 6.7 on the Mohs scale, and even today, working with it requires diamond tools, cooling, and constant pressure. However, the official version claims that the Egyptians used copper saws, sand, and manual labor. In 1995, engineer Christopher Dunn conducted measurements of the sarcophagi and showed that the inner corners have a perfect 90-degree geometry, and the surfaces do not have the waviness that is inevitable with manual processing. Such parameters are impossible without machine rotation and a stabilized tool. The strangest thing is that the sarcophagi were not used. Lids weighing up to 30 tons were moved, but inside no mummies, inscriptions, or ritual traces were found, which completely contradicts the purpose of tombs. These objects fit neither into the religious practices nor the technological capabilities of the Old Kingdom, and to this day, there is no explanation as to how they were carved, transported from Aswan over 800 kilometers away, and installed in narrow underground corridors with a margin of just a few centimeters. And this is not an isolated case. In Giza, in the so-called Granite Temple, there are blocks weighing up to 200 tons, fitted together without mortar, with gaps of less than a millimeter. Surface analysis shows traces of high-speed cutting, which do not match the tools known from the 3rd millennium BC. Egypt has been officially dated, studied, and thoroughly described, but there are still too many objects that look like traces of another technological culture that existed long before the pharaohs and disappeared without a trace. Maya cosmogram. In southern Mexico, in the state of Tabasco, archaeologists studied the Aguada Phoenix site, a huge earthen structure hidden beneath the forest. It's almost invisible in satellite images, but LiDAR, laser scanning technology capable of removing vegetation, revealed the clear outlines of a platform nearly 1.5 kilometers long. The structure turned out to be older than all known Maya centers, dating back to around 1000 BC, which is 1,000 years earlier than their famous pyramids and cities appeared. They found remnants of canals, dams, and straight roads around the platform, all precisely aligned with the cardinal directions. All of this looks like a carefully planned complex built without stone, only from earth and clay. Scientists call Aguada Phoenix a cosmogram. This is not a temple or a city, but rather a symbolic space, a model of the world embodied in the landscape. Judging by the findings, mass gatherings, rituals, and feasts took place here. There are no signs of kings, palaces, or sculptures. It appears everything was built collectively by communities without a central leader. This discovery was unexpected for archaeologists. It was previously believed that monumental structures among the Maya appeared only after the formation of complex cities and elites. But Aguada Phoenix shows the opposite. Large structures could have arisen before the formation of states as a result of collective efforts. Today, the site continues to be studied. For the residents of the region, it becomes a point of pride, and for archaeologists, a reminder that history does not always develop in a straight line. Sometimes people create not for the sake of power, but for the sake of an idea. Algerian Atlantis. The underwater part of Tapasa is being studied today just as seriously as the ruins on the shore. Divers and marine archaeologists are documenting amphorae, cisterns, and storage niches. And most importantly, the pier carved into the rock, which looks like an engineering structure rather than a random landform. These fragments come together to form a picture of a port. According to archaeologists, it operated at least from the 4th century BC to the 3rd century AD, moreover. The nature of the finds points to regular trade, not to occasional dumping into the sea. UNESCO insists on expanding the protected water area because the surf quickly erodes the cultural layer, and without official status, the site is vulnerable to intensive diving. And then we will lose even what we have managed to see. The team is lifting artifacts that were spotted back in the spring and is going over the dark outlines of the structure with new equipment. But only a series of dives and analysis of the deposits will provide the final answer. Before us is a sunken city that was taken by the water, or the lower tier of an ancient harbor that gradually settled beneath the waves. What fascinates me here is not the word Atlantis, but the opportunity to look into the working mechanics of a real port that was sustained by 3 eras at once: the Phoenician, Roman, and Byzantine. If we manage to record the layout of the docks and cisterns, we will finally understand what the coastal hub looked like, which the sources are silent about, and the sea still keeps hidden. The largest ancient labyrinth in India, in the steppes of Burmani, in the west of the country, archaeologists came across a huge stone labyrinth, which is estimated to be about 2,000 years old. This is not just a pattern on stone or a fragment of a drawing. It is a full-size structure arranged in such a way that it forms 15 concentric circles leading to the center, and is considered the largest known stone labyrinth found in India. Such a design is not an abstract drawing, but a logical, well-thought-out structure that could have had a ritual or navigational purpose. According to one hypothesis, these labyrinths served as landmarks for ancient merchants and travelers, helping them navigate routes that connected the shores of the western coast with the interior parts of the peninsula. The similarity of the patterns with examples found on ancient Roman coins provides grounds to speak of cultural and trade connections between India and other civilizations of that time. It is surprising that the monument was discovered by accident. It was not archaeologists who noticed it, but wildlife researchers during their routine work in the fields. Such a discovery reminds us how much is still hidden beneath the surface of the earth, and how ancient people could use shapes that seem mysterious to us today. The Iron Cages of Münster. On the spire of St. Lambert's Church in Münster, 3 metal cages hang. Tourists often mistake them for decorative elements, but they are a real part of 16th century history. In these cages, after execution, the bodies of the leaders of the Münster Rebellion of 1534 to 35 were displayed. At that time, the city came under the control of a radical Anabaptist movement. Its leaders, Jan of Leiden, Bernd Knipperdolling, and Bernhard Krechting, introduced new laws, established a new order, and kept the city under siege. After the fall of the Münster Commune, all 3 were executed publicly, and then their bodies were placed in these cages to show the rest of Europe what happens to such uprisings. Over time, the remains were removed, but the cages were left. They were repaired several times and moved higher, but the meaning remained the same. This is a direct artifact of that era, without any sugarcoating. Now they seem like something from a museum, but in the 16th century, it was a clear warning to people, visible from any corner of the city. These cages have survived wars, reconstructions, and changes of eras, and they still hang on the bell tower as one of the most unusual reminders of European religious conflicts. Stone Tower. In Baramini, Sardinia, a strange structure rises, a 3-story tower made of huge stone blocks. Without cement, without arches, without metal, everything holds together by the weight and precision. This is Su-Nuraxi, the heart of the ancient Nuragic culture that lived here more than 3,000 years ago. The tower is surrounded by a ring of smaller towers connected by walls, and inside there is a well carved directly into the rock. Its depth is 15 meters, and there is still water in it to this day. Scientists think Nuragis were used as fortresses, symbols of power, and possibly for rituals. Su-Nuraxi stands out for being almost completely preserved. You can climb the stairs, walk through the inner corridors, and see how people of the Bronze Age built things. Each slab weighs several tons, but they are laid so precisely that you can't fit a knife blade between them. Excavations have shown that this place was used for centuries, first as a fortification, then as a settlement, later as a storage area, and even as a burial site. In the 20th century, archaeologist Giovanni Liliu excavated the complex and showed it was an entire stone city, not just a single tower. The Nuraga are a reminder that Bronze Age Europe was not a dark place. People here knew how to design, build, and create monuments that have stood for millennia. Giants from the Ice Age. In the Yorkshire Dales National Park on the slopes of Ingleborough Hill lies one of the most unusual geological formations in the UK, the Norber erratic boulders. These massive blocks of dark sandstone and shale rest on light limestone bases, creating the impression of unstable balance. The stones are about 12,000 to 17,000 years old. They were brought here by the last glacier, which advanced from the north of England. When the ice retreated, the boulders remained in place, and the following millennia of erosion gradually washed away the surrounding limestone. Where the stone protected the surface from rain, small pedestals have been preserved. That's why it seems as if the boulders are hovering above the ground or were placed there artificially. Today, More than 100 such stone blocks can be counted on the slope of Ingleborough. They differ in size and shape, but all demonstrate the same principle of formation, a combination of the power of ice and the work of time. Geologists consider the Norber erratics a valuable testament to the last glaciation, and a rare example of natural balance that arose without human intervention. The site is included in the list of protected geological monuments of the United Kingdom and is considered one of the main natural attractions of northern England. For researchers, this is not just a collection of boulders, but an open archive of the region's climatic history, preserving traces of glacial processes that changed the landscape of Europe. Icy ruins under the snow. We are used to thinking that the Arctic is a place ruled only by icy emptiness, lifeless and devoid of any traces of civilization. But what if that's not the case? What if beneath the thick glaciers, there are not just traces of long-lost peoples, but entire lost cities? Satellite studies in recent years have led to the discovery of anomalous shapes beneath the icy crust, which may indicate ancient ruins hidden deep within the northern depths. According to some scientists, these cities could be much older than the earliest known civilizations: Mesopotamia, Egypt, ancient India. All these peoples might have simply been a continuation of something greater and more mysterious than we can imagine. How is this possible? How could it happen that such cities are hidden beneath kilometers-thick layers of ice? Today, these anomalies remain at the level of hypotheses, but each new study only deepens the mystery. Satellite images taken in the most remote corners of the planet show strange shapes and lines that resemble the structure of buildings, streets, or even entire cities. What if these glaciers are not just barriers, but burial grounds of ancient civilizations? Ice caps that conceal not only climate changes, but also forgotten epics of humanity. Amazingly, it's possible that these cities fell victim to global catastrophes that preceded the ice ages. After all, is there anything older than what is preserved in eternal ice? This question worries scientists more than ever, and perhaps if we unravel the mystery hidden beneath centuries-old ice, we will reconsider not only the history of our civilizations, but also our very understanding of how our world developed. What did the largest ship of antiquity look like? Humanity's need for huge warships arose long before steam engines and steel hulls. Even thousands of years ago, a fleet was considered the most important tool of influence and dominance. Through it, borders were strengthened, territories were conquered, and access to key resources was gained. It is believed that the foundation of ancient military shipbuilding was laid by the Diadochi, the successors. They were the first to build true war giants like polyremes and tesseracontaires, comparable in scale to modern battleships. One of the most impressive ships of antiquity was the Egyptian tesseraconter, built in the 3rd century BC by order of King Ptolemy IV Philopator. It was a true floating fortress, 130 meters long and 22 meters high. The vessel could hold about 4,000 rowers, not counting the crew, marines, and supplies. The name tesseracontaries translates as 40-oared, referring to the number of rows of oars. The exact number of oars is disputed. Researchers estimate it to be between 300 and 600. According to surviving descriptions, the ship was heavily armed. It had a ram, catapults, and battle towers, and outwardly resembled a moving fortress. Its sides were decorated with wooden carved vines. Crocodiles and other mythical creatures were painted on the stern, and the bow was crowned with a 5-meter figure of Aeolus, the Lord of the Winds. Inside there were halls, statues, even libraries, and according to some sources, stables. All this spoke more of status than of practical military necessity. The Tesseraconteras was more a symbol of power than an effective ship. Because of its size, it lacked proper maneuverability and couldn't even go out to sea on its own. It was towed by rowing boats. Nevertheless, its very existence was an engineering breakthrough. The Egyptian Tesseracontaries is not just an archaic ship, but a vivid example of how ancient technologies could reach incredible scales. Yes, it didn't become a battle legend, but it definitely went down in history as one of the most ambitious naval projects of its time. The Forgotten Stone. In the very center of Lebanon, not far from the ancient temple complex of Baalbek, lies one of the largest worked stone blocks in history. This gigantic monolith, known as the Forgotten Stone, impresses with its dimensions: 19.6 meters long, 6 meters wide, and at least 5 meters high. Its weight is estimated at about 1,500 tons, which is equivalent to 200 African elephants. Some researchers believe that the stone was intended for an even more grandiose structure than Baalbek itself. However, for unknown reasons, it was never delivered to the construction site. The temple complex of Baalbek, known for its colossal megaliths, was built during the Roman rule in the 1st through 3rd centuries AD. However, the mysterious platforms made of giant blocks, including the famous trilithon, may have appeared much earlier. Who were those ancient builders? The Temple of the Builders, who shaped and tried to move such massive stones. Perhaps Baalbek is the legacy of a much older and highly developed civilization, the traces of which remain unsolved for now. The largest log house in the world. At the turn of the 20th century, Portland, Oregon, was a thriving economic center. The city was known for its flour milling and timber industries, and its deepwater port at the Willamette and Columbia Rivers confluence made Portland a key transportation hub. The late 19th century depression seriously hurt the region's economy. To attract investment and revive business activity, the Lewis and Clark Centennial Exposition was organized in 1905. This grand fair lasted for 4 months and attracted 1.6 million visitors from 21 countries. Dozens of buildings with domes and arches towered over the exposition, including the luxurious pavilions of Italy, France, and Germany. However, most of the buildings were temporary, made of plaster on a wooden frame. The exception was the Forestry Building, which was called the largest log structure in the world. This massive structure, 62 meters long and 22 meters high, was built from whole logs brought from the forests of Columbia County. Inside, there were colonnades made of 54 rough-hewn trunks, supporting a 2-story nave. The building's exhibition included animal taxidermy, Native American artifacts, and displays telling about Oregon's rich natural resources. After the exhibition ended, the Forestry Building was purchased in 1914. It was nearly destroyed by a fire, but the building survived. However, in 1964, a powerful fire finally turned it into ruins. Columns of fire, as tall as a 10-story building, lit up the sky for many kilometers, shattering windows in nearby buildings, and ash spread throughout the entire city. To make up for the loss, the Western Institute of Forestry was established, and in 1791, a new building opened in Washington Park. In 1986, it was renamed the World Forestry Center to emphasize the importance of this field for the entire world. This is how Portland became the forestry capital of the United States. A brewery from the time of Egypt's first rulers. Archaeologists have discovered the world's oldest brewery, located in the necropolis of Abydos, Egypt. This discovery not only sheds light on early brewing technologies, but also helps us understand how resources were managed during the construction of the pyramids. The complex consists of 8 massive installations, each up to 20 meters long. Each of them contains 2 rows of 40 vessels, which were used to heat a mixture of grain and water, a classic beer brewing process. Scientists date the brewery to the era of Pharaoh Narmer, who is considered the founder of the first dynasty. Dr. Adams, who led the research, called this discovery an example of industrial-scale production and noted that it shows a high level of labor organization in ancient Egypt. The facility's ability to manage the mass distribution of resources and organize the workforce allowed the Egyptians to build grand structures, including the pyramids. In addition, beer played an important role in rituals. Large-scale production in Abydos indicates its use in sacrifices, ceremonies, and rituals, which confirms its significance in the development of Egyptian royal power. The Sistine Chapel of ancient Egypt. Before you is one of the most stunning tombs of ancient Egypt, the burial place of Queen Nefertari, wife of Ramses II. It is already more than 3,200 years old, and it is often called the Sistine Chapel of Egypt because of its incredible paintings. Unlike many other tombs, this one impresses not only with its scale, but also with its bright, almost untouched colors. On the walls, there are scenes from the Book of the Dead, images of gods and Nefertari herself walking into the afterlife. The Egyptians believed that such paintings would help the deceased pass the trials and achieve eternal life. The detailing is amazing. Fine lines, intricate patterns, and vibrant colors. All of this makes the tomb a true masterpiece. Unfortunately, many sections of the walls have been damaged by time, but restorers have managed to preserve its grandeur. Today, this tomb is considered one of the most beautiful in the Valley of the Queens and a true window into the world of ancient Egyptian art. Stationary objects underwater. There are many stationary anomalous objects hidden in the world's oceans that still remain a mystery to scientists. Even if we set aside myths, such as the legends of Atlantis, the list of interesting discoveries still remains impressive. One of the most famous is the Yonaguni Monument, located near the Ryukyu Islands, not far from the Japanese island of Yonaguni. These are stone structures located at a shallow depth, which have regular geometric shapes. Although most scientists consider them to be natural geological formations, many researchers and pseudo-archaeologists try to prove that these stones are the result of human activity. Another mystery is the megalith found at the bottom of the Pantelleria Vecchia Bank in the Strait of Sicily. It is a huge stone, 12 meters long and weighing 15 tons with 3 round holes in it. Based on its structure, it is believed that it was shaped by humans in the Mesolithic period about 12 to 15,000 years ago. However, analysis of the rock has shown that its age could be much greater, over 40,000 years, which casts doubt on its origin. The Cuban underwater city is another mysterious discovery made in 2001 off the western coast of Cuba. Using sonar, geometric structures were discovered that resemble pyramids and rings made of granite blocks. These findings have raised many questions among researchers, as they could be either natural formations or the result of human activity. These and other objects remain the subject of active research and discussion, as their origin could reveal much that is unknown about ancient civilizations and the nature of the ocean depths. The Great Pyramid at the Mayan site of San Andrés was built in response to the eruption of the Tierra Blanca Joven volcano in the Lago Ilopango caldera. San Andrés, located in the Zapotitan Valley in the La Libertad department of El Salvador, was founded around 900 BC as an agricultural center, which later became the capital of a Mayan state between 600 and 900 AD. The eruption of the Tierra Blanca Joven volcano, which occurred around 539 AD, was one of the largest volcanic events in history, ejecting about 43.7 cubic kilometers of volcanic material. It caused significant climate changes and devastated an area with a radius of up to 100 kilometers. Dr. Akira Achikawa from the University of Colorado Boulder noted that due to the scale of the disaster, many settlements were abandoned and it took a long time for them to recover. However, research in San Andrés, just 40 kilometers from Lago Ilopango, showed that construction began just a few years after the eruption. The construction of the La Campana Pyramid began just 5 to 30 years after the eruption, and it took about 80 years to complete. The pyramid, standing 7 meters tall and with a volume of 23,000 cubic meters, became the largest structure in the valley. Dr. Achikawa suggests that the pyramid was built using volcanic
Пепла в качестве материала и
material of religious significance related to the veneration of volcanoes in order to protect against future eruptions. The large megalithic complex Zoretz Kherer, also known as the Armenian Stonehenge, is one of the most mysterious ancient structures in the Caucasus. This ancient monument, located in the south of Armenia, consists of hundreds of vertically standing stones, some of which reach several meters in height. Of particular interest are the stones with holes in the upper part, which attract the attention of researchers and mystery enthusiasts. Zoretz Kherer dates back to approximately the 6th millennium BC, which makes it one of the oldest structures of its kind. Supporters of the theory about extraterrestrial civilizations suggest the hypothesis that these holes could have been used for observing the stars, or even for communicating with extraterrestrial beings. They claim that the precision of the hole's placement and the orientation of the stones may indicate astronomical or some other more complex capabilities that could not have been available to the ancient inhabitants of Armenia without outside help. However, there is no scientific evidence for these theories. Most researchers believe that the Armenian Stonehenge was an ancient observatory used for observing celestial bodies, or it was a place where rituals and ceremonies were held. This ancient monument continues to attract the attention of researchers and tourists, inspiring them to search for answers about its true role in the lives of ancient civilizations. Ancient Labyrinth. Modern remote sensing methods provide archaeology with new tools for understanding the past. One striking example is the study of the surroundings of Rujum el-Hiri, an ancient complex of stone circles to the northeast of the Sea of Galilee. This mysterious monument clearly shows how satellite images allow us to look at the landscape from a completely different perspective. Scientists analyzed photographs of the area within a 30-kilometer radius and discovered numerous megalithic structures, massive circles with thick walls, and mysterious flower-shaped enclosures near rivers. According to one hypothesis, all of them could have been elements of irrigation, defense, or livestock enclosures. In addition, the images show burial mounds of various shapes and sizes, which could possibly be graves or signal hills. The results of geological measurements are no less intriguing. It seems that the ground itself has shifted over the past millennium, which is why the hypothesis about the astronomical purpose of Rujum el-Hiri has come into question. The satellite image reveals the multi-layered nature of the construction, an archaeological palimpsest where later structures were built on top of earlier ones. Such studies open the door to the distant past. By comparing satellite data, excavation results, and geophysical analyses, scientists hope to reconstruct the lives of the ancient inhabitants of the Levant and better understand why they built such monumental stone labyrinths and surrounded them with complex agricultural systems. The Great Conservatory, Chatsworth. Long before the legendary Crystal Palace built by Joseph Paxton for the Great Exhibition of 1851, he honed his skills on the grounds of Chatsworth House in picturesque Derbyshire. There, the colossal Great Conservatory was built, a giant glass house where Paxton tested innovative methods that he would later use in constructing London's main architectural sensation. Back in the 1830s, while working as the head gardener, Paxton reimagined the landscape of Chatsworth, creating a 16-hectare arboretum and cultivating exotic plants like pineapples. Modern greenhouses were just becoming popular, while Chatsworth's old hothouses were already in disrepair. Paxton introduced a new roof design angled towards the morning and evening sun, and an original metal frame that allowed for maximum daylight to pass through. This approach was quickly adopted by others. In 1836, he began constructing a grand greenhouse, 70 meters long, 38 meters wide, and almost 20 meters high. Inside, even a pair of carriages could pass through, and a staircase hidden behind rocky outcrops led to a gallery that offered a view of the crowns of tropical palms. A warm climate was maintained by 8 coal boilers, connected by an underground maze of pipes and a railway that delivered fuel. Up to 300 tons of coal were needed for the winter. However, by the beginning of World War I, there was a catastrophic shortage of fuel. The heating was stopped and all the plants died. The insanely expensive large greenhouse was soon demolished. But it was there that the technologies were developed that made the grand illumination of the Crystal Palace possible. A city in the center of the Sahara. The Central Sahara in Niger is a territory that is practically inaccessible to people. Any tourist heading south from the Mediterranean coast faced a huge number of obstacles. Giant dunes, exhausting heat, and drying winds create a landscape that is almost devoid of life, but those who venture into the depths of the Great Desert are in for a surprise. Surrounded by sandy canyons on a lonely plateau lie the ruins of the massive fortress city of Jado. These ruins, which are between 800 and 1,000 years old, are a mystery. The city emerged when this part of the desert was much wetter and more fertile. Little is known about the people who lived here, and who built this city remains unknown. The fortress city of Jado is a Ksar, a typical North African fortified settlement. Such settlements usually consist of residential buildings constructed around a central food storage, with an emphasis on defensive functions. Ksars like Jado were built from palm trunks covered with adobe mixture, hardened by desert winds to the strength of metal. What sets Jado apart from most similar Ksars is its incredible size. The colossal fortress towers over the desert, making the rest of the landscape seem insignificant. The Kanuri people who inhabit the desert in the center of the Sahara were the last known inhabitants of this place. It is possible that the city was inherited by them from a more ancient culture about which no records have survived. The turning point that likely forced the Kanuri to leave Jado was probably the depletion of drinking water. As the green landscape turned into desert, the water became brackish, and the environment too harsh for survival. People lived on the Jado Plateau for about 60,000 years, leaving behind rock paintings and other evidence of their presence. Small livestock were raised here as early as 7000 BC, and cattle appeared around 3500 BC. A rock painting found in the Air Mountains is about 5,500 to 4,500 years old. They depict a world with dense vegetation and abundant animals, completely unlike the modern landscape. Today, reaching the once great city is very difficult. This part of the world is unstable, and the tribes inhabiting the area are constantly fighting for limited resources. The Kanuri now live in the neighboring desert village of Chirfa, but every year they return to their ancestral land to harvest dates. Strangely, the date palms continue to bear fruit. The Kanuri are a remnant of the ancient Kanem civilization, which ruled in the Central Sahara from 700 to 1300 AD. The origins of this empire are shrouded in mystery, and it is unknown whether Jadu was founded during this period or even earlier. If the Kanem built Jadu, then excavations could reveal a lot about this culture. But if they inherited it, perhaps someday something else will be discovered, hidden from human eyes and guarded by the desert, waiting to reveal all its secrets. There was life on Mars, there is evidence. In the 1980s, the CIA conducted experiments with people who had extrasensory abilities. Among them was Joe McMoneagle, known as Remote Viewer Number 1. He shared his memories on the podcast American Alchemy, talking about secret projects and unusual visions. One day, he was given coordinates and asked to describe what he saw. McMoneagle talked about a giant pyramid, bigger than the Great Pyramid of Giza, with huge halls inside. There were beings there who looked like humans, but were much taller. They were trapped, surrounded by a hostile atmosphere, and were slowly dying. Then the instructor showed a white card with the inscription, Mars 1 million BC. Later, McMoneagle visited NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory to study the photo negatives. He found strange structures and bones on them. In his opinion, there was once a civilization on Mars, but a massive cosmic object deprived the planet of its atmosphere, leading to its demise. McMoneagle also participated in the CIA's Stargate project, where psychics were trained to penetrate the minds of enemies. In 2017, a document called Mars Exploration was declassified, which described his visions in detail. The report specified the exact coordinates of 40.89 degrees north latitude and 9.55 degrees west longitude. McMoneagle saw Martians in unusual clothing, a raging storm, and giant pyramids that were used as shelters. He described the room inside the pyramid as minimalist, intended for sleeping or hibernation. The Martians were waiting for help, but no rescue came. The psychic was sure he was describing Earth. When he found out it was Mars, he got angry because he couldn't verify the truth of his visions. McMoneagle demanded NASA release images of the coordinates he received. The images showed a strange structure beside the crater. He claimed that if the pyramid had existed before the impact, it would have been destroyed by the collision. Moreover, according to him, when NASA first detected this structure, it was emitting a red glow. Although such experiments remain controversial, the fact that they were conducted is confirmed by official documents. The mystery of the ancient civilization on Mars remains unsolved. A story you won't find in textbooks. Not long ago, archaeologists found evidence that in ancient Troy, people were already drinking wine long before the Iliad was written. This is not just a theory or a guess, but real chemical evidence that confirmed that even ordinary people in the territory of Troy not only drank wine, but also used it in their daily lives. For researchers, this was a sensation because in ancient times, usually only the elite could afford the luxury of drinking wine. But in Troy, it was available to all layers of society. Research has shown that the cult of wine was so important to the inhabitants of Troy that the vessels in which it was drunk were found throughout the city, from wealthy palaces to simple residential quarters. But what's even more interesting is that the fermentation method used in Troy was so unique that it resembled those of more complex and advanced civilizations of that time. And now, thanks to this research, we can confidently say that Troy was not just a legend, it was a reality, and its culture was much more complex and progressive than we could have imagined. Ancient Fortress City. In the Chinese city of Dongguan, Guangdong Province, archaeologists have discovered a fortress city that is more than 600 years old. The discovery sheds light on the defensive systems of the South China Sea during the Ming Dynasty. The excavations revealed massive fortress walls about 100 meters long and 7.6 meters thick, as well as remains of roads, drains, foundations, and wells. The total research area was 3,000 square meters, making the project the largest in the region in recent years. The fortress was the first line of defense for the province against sea invasions. Scientists plan to restore the city layout and create an archaeological park to better understand the military architecture of that time. Meanwhile, on Mount Helen in the Yinchuan area, archaeologists found an ancient porcelain production center about 1,000 years old. The ceramics found there are surprisingly similar to the products from Jingdezhen, the porcelain capital. This discovery confirms the high level of cultural integration in medieval China. Ritual table in Tavatepe. In Azerbaijan, a team of Italian and Azerbaijani archaeologists discovered a 3,500-year-old ritual table in the ancient settlement of Tavatepe. This site is located near the borders of Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. During the excavations, a round adobe structure was found. The structure includes a kitchen area and a ritual table. Between 1500 and 750 BC, during the late Bronze and early Iron Ages, nomadic peoples likely used Tavatepe as a resting place before traveling through the mountains. Archaeologists also found a ritual table with 8 recesses and many ceramic containers, bowls, vessels made of black fired ceramics, and long flat stones for mixing food. In the corner of the kitchen, a thick layer of ash and clay tokens with fingerprints, which may have served as food vouchers, have been preserved. At the entrance, there were originally wooden columns, and a thatched roof covered the entire complex, which was about 15 meters in diameter. Outside, animal bones and discarded ceramic dishes were found, human figurines placed in sacrificial pits, and the fact that the structure was sealed along with all the dishes indicate its ceremonial nature. The cost of building the Pyramid of Khufu. We are used to skyscrapers that rise with the help of metal frames and walls. The Pyramid of Khufu, built around 2600 BC, still captures the imagination. Its height reached 146 meters, and only by the 13th century AD did taller buildings appear. To understand how much it would cost to build such a pyramid today, historians and engineers estimated the expenses for stone, transportation, salaries, crane rentals, and other items. The total comes out to an impressive amount, about $5 billion. After all, it would require about 2.5 million cubic meters of limestone, which would have to be transported from quarries, and for the interior facing, thousands of tons of granite from Aswan, located hundreds of kilometers away. Add to that the designers, geologists, fuel for transporting the blocks, and giant cranes. In ancient times, everything was done by hand. It is believed that thousands of free workers worked on the construction site, regularly replaced by teams who received decent food and housing. They moved multi-ton blocks along ramps using wooden rollers and built a colossal structure that amazes with the precision of its assembly. Even today, you can't fit a knife blade between some of the stones. According to some experts, construction took between 20 and 27 years. To feed the workers, about 2 tons of meat were needed every day, not counting grain, vegetables, and water. It is noteworthy that the project was led by Kim Yoon, the pharaoh's nephew, who actually served as the chief architect. He was the one who coordinated the work of tens of thousands of people, which in itself speaks to the impressive organization of labor in ancient Egypt. Today, the pyramids remain not only a site of historical heritage, but also a source of eternal questions about what humanity is capable of in pursuit of ambitious goals. For the Egyptians, the Pyramid of Khufu was something more than just a building. It is a symbol of the pharaoh's power and the highest achievement of engineering thought of its time, which still inspires us to bold.
Вершение.
A fortress in the middle of the desert. The ruins of the ancient Berber Xardra, lost in an ocean of sand dunes, are an amazing architectural monument and a testament to the lives of people who mastered the desert lands. This Qasr, located in Algeria, was hidden under layers of sand for a long time, which allowed it to be well preserved to this day. Xardra is a traditional fortified village typical of the North African region. It was built to protect the residents and their families, property from raids and the harsh conditions of the desert. The fortifications include massive walls and towers, which not only protected the inhabitants but also served as shelter from the scorching sun. The date of the Xar's construction remains unknown, which adds to its mystery. Modern technologies such as satellite imaging make it possible to study the ruins and their surroundings from above, offering a new perspective on the architectural heritage of the Berbers. The oldest bridge on the planet that is still in use is the Arcadico Bridge, located in the Peloponnese between ancient Tiryns and Epidaurus. Built around 1300 BC, it is one of the oldest surviving bridges in the world. The structure was built from limestone boulders using the Cyclopean masonry technique without mortar, but with perfectly fitted stones. It is 22 meters long, 5.6 meters wide, and 4 meters high. At the base, there is a small culvert, about 1 meter wide. The roadway of the bridge is 2.5 meters wide, allowing even a modern car to pass. But originally, the bridge was intended for chariots, traces of which can be seen on the stones. Arcadico is one of 4 Mycenaean bridges preserved along the ancient road. 1 kilometer away is the Petrojaffiri Bridge, which is slightly higher in design but also still in use today. Another preserved Mycenaean bridge is located in Lycotripa, in the north of Argolis. It was part of another important Bronze Age road, once raced by chariots. They left behind curbstone guides. The uniqueness of these bridges lies not only in their age, but also in the fact that they still serve their purpose after more than 3,000 years. Noah's Ark found. According to the Bible, Noah's Ark saved people and animals from the Great Flood. And now, 5,000 years later, researchers have once again turned their attention to one of the most mysterious places, the Durupinar Formation in Turkey. This 163-meter structure matches the size described in the Bible, the biblical description of the legendary vessel. Scientists from Istanbul Technical University and Agri University, Ibrahim Sesin, have been studying the area since 2021. A recent analysis of 30 soil samples revealed clay, marine deposits, and mollusk remains dating back 3,500 to 5,000 years. This suggests that the region did indeed experience a powerful flood. The formation is located just 30 kilometers from Mount Ararat, where, according to the Bible, the ark came to rest after the flood. The size of the structure is also close to the biblical description. The supposed length of the ark is 157 meters, while the Durupinar site measures 163. However, many geologists are skeptical about this hypothesis. They believe that the Durupinar site is just a natural formation. Nevertheless, the discovery continues to attract interest and new research. The Great Bell of Damazidi. The Great Bell of Damazidi is considered the largest bell ever made. It was cast in 1484 by order of King Damazedi of Myanmar and installed at the famous Shwedagon Pagoda in Yangon, one of the most sacred places for Buddhists in the country. According to historical records, the bell weighed over 290 tons, making it a record holder among such structures. However, the fate of the bell turned out to be tragic. In 1608, the Portuguese mercenary and adventurer Felipe de Brito captured Yangon and decided to take the bell to melt it down for weapons. He misjudged the structure's weight while crossing the Bago River, causing the bell to capsize the barge and sink. Since then, it has never been found, despite numerous attempts. Today, the Great Damazedi Bell remains part of the legends and national pride of Myanmar. Its story is a reminder of how culture, spirituality, and greed can intertwine in a single artifact, the fate of which remains a mystery to this day. A pyramid sunken before history. Near Yonaguni Island, at a depth of 30 meters, a stone pyramid lies on the ocean floor. Even steps, terraces, arches, and openings, everything looks as if it's a building, not just random rocks. The object is about 10,000 years old. That means it was built even before the Sumerians, Egyptians, and the first cities. Scientists are still debating it. Some are convinced that it's a natural formation, while others believe Yonaguni is proof of a previously unrecognized civilization. If they're right, it could completely change our understanding of when and how human history began. What if this isn't just a mistaken trace of history, but a trace of some civilization? What if there's a history hidden beneath this ocean that we don't know about? The last witness of Nagasaki, Alistair Urquhart, a Scotsman and a soldier of the British Gordon Highlanders, is considered one of the most incredible survivors of World War II. In 1939, at the age of 19, he was sent to Singapore. After the surrender of British troops in 1942, he was taken prisoner by the Japanese and sent to Changi Camp, where 50,000 prisoners were held in facilities designed for only a few thousand. He was later assigned to build the Burma Railway, also known as the Death Railway. The working conditions were deadly: heat, disease, hunger, insects, and brutal punishments. Urquhart contracted cholera and malaria, suffered from ulcers due to constant beatings, but survived. He was tortured and put in solitary confinement, which was a pit covered with a metal sheet under the scorching sun. He spent 6 days there before being sent back to work. Despite exhaustion, he kept working, witnessing thousands of prisoners of war die. In 1944, he was transferred to Singapore and then to a Japanese transport known as the Hell Ship. There was no water or air in the holds, and the prisoners died standing from thirst and disease. After 6 days, the ship was torpedoed by an American submarine. Urquhart survived, swam out of the burning sea, and spent several days on an improvised raft under the scorching sun, surrounded by sharks. He was rescued by Japanese whalers, but he ended up in captivity again. The prisoner was sent to a camp near Nagasaki. On August 9, 1945, while he was in the prison toilet, the city was destroyed by an atomic bomb. Urquhart suffered burns and concussions, but survived. After Japan's surrender, he was freed and brought to the United Kingdom. Alistair Urquhart lived a long life and died in 2016 at the age of 97. His story became an example of human resilience and will to survive. And the book, The Forgotten Highlander, became one of the most quoted war memoirs in the United Kingdom. These stories differ in time and place, but they have one thing in common: verifiable data and careful conclusions. Thank you for watching this video until the end. Goodbye, everyone.